We are now live. We're just waiting for other board members, and we'll get started in a minute.
Great. Good evening, everyone. We will go ahead and get started here for open session. This is the Franklin-McKinley School Board meeting for March 23rd. And we are going to start off with general matters, item 3. Item 3.01, the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read now. We acknowledge that the Franklin-McKinley School District and our schools are located in the Muwekma Nation, the sovereign nation and the original people of the skies, land, and waters where we learn and work. The Muwekma people are the stewards of these lands and of the teaching and learnings that come from and respond to the needs of the land and the people who share it. May our daily lives and work, learning, teaching, and community engagement support the evolving vision of the Muwekma for their community and these lands. We will now go to item 3.02, the flag salutes.
Board President, if I could just
Yes.
make an announcement that we anticipating that maybe we had public that wanted to join us today and listen to the board meeting in their primary language. We do have Vietnamese and Spanish speaking translation, so they will have to log in as an attendee. And then on the bottom, they can go ahead and there's a little globe where they can indicate the language that they want to listen to the meeting.
Can we say that in the 2 languages?
Yeah, thank you for that. Muy buenas tardes. En anticipación de que íbamos a tener tal vez padres, comunidad que quería escuchar la junta en español, tenemos traducción, entonces si se tienen que ingresar a la junta a través del link, no a través de la YouTube. En YouTube no se puede traducir. Ya una vez que se ingresa a la aplicación de Zoom, abajo está un globo, interpretación, y ahí puede indicar el lenguaje que quiere escuchar la junta. Tan or Mike, can you do that in Vietnamese, please? Mike, can you say that in Vietnamese?
She's in the Vietnamese room. You'll have to say it, Tan.
Oh.
Chào quý vị, nếu quý vị muốn nghe cái họp này trong tiếng Việt á, thì quý vị có phải vô cái Zoom client để cho nghe cái tiếng Việt thâm dịch. Ở dưới cái Zoom client thì có cái button interpretation đó. bấm vô cái đó xong bấm vô tiếng Việt thì quý vị nghe trong tiếng Việt được. Cảm ơn quý vị.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Tom and Superintendent Cruz. So we'll go to item 3.02, which is the flag salutes. And if I could have Board Member Rodriguez lead us in the flag salute.
Absolutely. If everyone could please stand.
Thank you.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. We will now go to item 3.03, approve, disapprove additions to the agenda. Hearing none, we'll go to item 3.04, approve, disapprove order of the agenda. Hearing none, we'll go to item 3.05, report of action taken in closed session. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, thank you. The board unanimously approved the closed session minutes for March 9th, 2021. There are no other actions to report.
Thank you. We will now go on to item 4, oral communications. Members of the public may address the board on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board or agenda items. Members of the public may also address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. No action can be taken on any agenda items at this time. Questions may be referred to the administration or put on a future agenda. We will go to item 4.01, oral communications. Superintendent Cruz, do we have any oral communications? Superintendent Cruz, do we have any oral communications?
We do not have for general matters. We do have a number of speakers that want to speak for item 5.01.
Okay, thank you. We will now go to item 5, information, discussion, and or action items. Item 5.01, in-person instructional model for targeted students. And Dr. Martinez-Palma, are you starting us off with this item?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So this evening we are presenting a short presentation on where we are with in-person cohort instruction. As you know, board members, you had a different slide deck before and we've revised it and we will update you on our recommendation. Next slide, please. Sorry about it getting, there you go. Okay, so just a refresher. Back in November, when this board approved that all of our students would stay in distance learning for the remainder of the school year. This was during a time when COVID rates were very high. There was a lot of concern over the safety of our students and staff. And so the bold decision to remain in distance learning was done with also a recommendation from this board to look for ways to improve distance learning, but also to develop a plan or to decide on a way of bringing special population groups in to receive in-person instruction while ensuring the safety of our students and staff. And so in that meeting, some of the groups that were identified as student groups to look at were English learners, newcomer students, students with special needs, and homeless and foster youth. Next slide, please. So some of the questions that we began to ask ourselves as an organization is, who are the students that would most benefit from in-person instructional support? And the reason why this question needed further exploration is because, for example, when we think of English learners, we think, we need to remember that about 43% of our Franklin-McKinley School District population is English learner. And so who might we prioritize for in-person instruction. And when we look at the special population, it was really identify who would best be served by receiving instruction in person. And also thinking about what were the health and safety procedures that we would have to put in place, knowing that we were always being reminded and updated on protocols from the Department of Public Health. Another question that kept popping in our minds as we started to look at this and as time kept going by was, what would be the benefit of offering it in the spring, later in the year? Interestingly enough, as we began this work, it was during the time where the vaccines were becoming more available, and it's only been recently that our educators are being vaccinated. So the conversations changed as the climate and as things started to change in our reality. And then our biggest question that we had was, who would be interested? I mean, do we even know if we even have teachers who would be interested in teaching in person, and whether we would have even parents who might be comfortable with exploring an in-person instructional option. Next slide, please. So we always have to remember that we have to think about safety first, and this is just a list of some of the procedures that we are prepared to put in place in welcoming our students back. And so again, I don't need to read them to you, but just as a reminder, we do have the staff and the materials, and we are prepared to receive students and to follow everything that would be required of us based on the Department of Public Health's recommendations. Next slide, please. So the process for this work started a few months ago with the putting together of a committee. I called it the COVID-19 Educational Programs Committee. And so it was made up of teachers from different sites. We had our bargaining unit presidents or chair people on that committee. A few of our staff are parents themselves. And so we've had some conversations, starting with those critical questions that I posed earlier, but also just trying to figure out how could we plan for this, not knowing whether we would even have teachers who would be willing. And so we put out a survey. We started to look at options for ways of doing this. And I just want to interject, it's been very challenging to figure out a good way to do this that would benefit students and also keeps staff safe. In the meantime, district staff has continued to monitor our case rates in our area, continuously being updated by the superintendent and by exec cab about changes that were happening, with guidances on students returning in. Since then, we've had COVID testing for staff regularly every 2 weeks. Information is always being shared to us by our exec cab on access to vaccinations. We had some town hall meetings recently with parents and yesterday with staff, and we conducted a couple of teacher surveys just to see what interest there was. Next slide, please. So I need to start with what is a cohort, because we're not talking about a full reopening. And sometimes when we start to have these conversations, people confuse it with what other districts are doing in terms of full reopening of certain grade levels or schools. This is about bringing small groups of students in for some very targeted instructional support. And so here's the definition of a cohort that was provided to us by the latest reopening guidebook that was provided. And as you see here, it would be a stable cohort with the same students that would stay together, supervised by up to 2 adults. The students would not only learn together, but would also eat together and would stay together in order to ensure safety. Next slide, please.
If I could, Dr. Martinez-Palmer, just to interject something that we just got further guidance just today. The cohort has now changed due to the fact that there's a less of a socially distant requirement. And so the state has now adjusted the cohort language to not cap it at 16. At one point, it was no more than 16 with students and adults. And now, as long as we are able to meet the 3 feet social distancing, there's no cap in terms of how many students can be in a particular classroom, as long as the other mitigation factors are taken into consideration in terms of mask, ventilation, testing, and all those things. We're not moving in that direction in terms of moving to 3 feet just yet. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, but I just wanted to make sure that, since that just came out today, that there's new further guidance in this. More information will be, I'm sure, coming from public health in regards to the different requirements that we'll have moving forward.
Thank you, Superintendent. So our first survey took place in the first week of March, and this was the result of that survey, or is this the latest result? No. Yeah. Oh, yeah, this is part of this is the latest result. I'm sorry, there were 2 surveys, and so I have to make sure I'm looking at the right data. So this was the second survey that was done, and this was as of March 19th, but I have more current information that I can share with you that's probably more relevant. So in surveying the teachers, 16% of our teachers said that they would be willing to teach in person. And that is once we presented a couple of options to them. The first time we did the survey, we did not present any options. We were just curious about taking a temperature check to see if we even had teachers who would be interested. The second time we surveyed, which is the results here as of March 19th, and now currently we have about 43 teachers that have said they are willing to teach in person. And of those teachers, 6 are SDC teachers. All the schools were represented except CCA. But I need to say that there were some schools that had as many as 4 teachers who would be willing to teach in person at different grade levels. And we had some schools that had as few as maybe 1 teacher. So it wasn't equitable across the district. So this just gives you an idea that there is an interest in our organization to teach in person. Next slide, please. So we also surveyed our parents in March, and we had over 2,000 parents respond to a survey that was provided in 3 languages. Of the parents that answered the survey, you can see here the numbers identifying students that belong to the special population groups. And in a nutshell, the parents of preschoolers, students with disabilities, and EL students tended to be more interested in having their child receive in-person instruction this spring. And I wanted to highlight that because I wanted to filter out the data to see if the board's request to look at these specific groups was in line with what parents were feeling, and it was. And so it just validated that these are the students that the parents would be interested for having in-person instructional support. Next slide, please. So last week we had some parent town hall meetings, and at that time we also presented much of the information we're sharing with you this evening, but also we explored 2 different options for providing in-person instructional support. We also talked about summer school and what that would be looking like for this coming summer. And Superintendent Cruz provided an update on school opening. Here you have highlighted some of the concerns that were surfaced during those town hall meetings. While there were some parents that were very interested and expressed interest in having children have in-person instruction, the concerns across the board were still around health and safety, the fact that they were concerned that vaccinations were still not available to families. There was concern that staff had not been vaccinated, or that we didn't have information to share about how many staff members had been vaccinated. We had to share with the community that that's private information. And so there was still concern about that. And one of the main concerns was the regrouping and the possibilities of students not having their current teacher. So let me just pause here to explain that the options that were presented to the parents, which were the same options that were part of the teacher survey, would require a regrouping of students across grade levels and perhaps even across schools if in fact we want teachers to be serving students who are most in need. And so in order to prioritize in-person instruction for those students, it would mean that we would have to reshuffle or regroup, knowing that not all students would have access to in-person instruction, especially since we don't have as many teachers who are interested in providing that that option, that instruction. Next slide, please. So overall, in our initial options, as I just finished describing, concerns from staff and parents have been consistent that there's a concern about regrouping students, especially at this point of time in the school year. There were concerns about relationships that have already been developed between teachers and their students, and the thought of having to regroup was a major concern. Parents expressed they didn't want a different teacher for their child at this point in time. Most teachers, if not many, probably most teachers, I was going to say all of them, but maybe not all. Most teachers at the town hall meetings were very vocal that they would prefer to teach their own students. That in fact, if they wanted to teach, provide in-person instruction for their most vulnerable students or students that need the most support, that they would rather do it with their own kids, but they also wanted to keep their other children. They also wanted to keep the students that maybe would continue in distance learning. This poses a problem because then we know that some students are going to receive the in-person option, others would not. What if you had a child whose teacher did not feel comfortable with in person, but was interested in person? So it started to raise a lot of concerns over equity and access. There is also concern, especially lately, as we've heard, some educators are still struggling with trying to get their second vaccine. And so the possibility of not having everyone fully vaccinated until later in the year is something that we need to be mindful of. One of the groups that we highlighted or that we were targeting was the students with disabilities, and knowing that we have some teachers who are willing to do in person and others are not, raises again another concern of equity and access. And also neither option really worked well for the middle schools. The middle schools is a very challenging, it's very challenging because of the single subject teachers, the different classes that the students have. And unless everyone was teaching in person, it would be extremely challenging, if not impossible, to implement. Next slide, please. So I will let Superintendent Cruz describe now a different proposed model as a result of all the feedback that we have received.
So, as part of the process, right, we gather input from staff and from parents, and we heard clearly that the biggest challenge was the regrouping of students, and that that is really was the most challenging piece. Above and beyond the health and safety was this prospect that for students that were going to come in person, and even the ones that were going to stay in distance learning, the possibility of being regrouped with another teacher late in the year was the most concerning for everybody, and we understand that. And so from that, we've looked at modifying one of the models that allow for that to happen, and that we look at a way for us to meet the needs of most students in person, whether it's instruction or through our choral program, that allows for the teachers to keep their students. And so I think it meets
Well, while we're waiting, I can share with the board that we also have an extended learning opportunity program right now. Okay, I'll do that later. I'll let you finish.
The option number 2, they would work with their principal and their parents from their roster and identify the students that need the most support in person. And they would start to recruit and get agreement from parents that they're willing to come to for in-person instruction. And then these would be the students up to 15 that would be part of Group A, choral until 3 o'clock. So this is sort of what we came up with.
As I mentioned earlier, look at who are the students that are going to be invited, work with transportation for students with disabilities, communication, planning with teachers. And we are tentatively wanting to start on April 19th, knowing that there would only be 7 weeks of school left, but there would be, some work to be done about how to welcome our students back. We'd have to not start with academics, but we'd have to really think about how to help the students that are coming in person. But we would work quickly to do that if that's what the board wishes to move forward on. Thank you.
Martinez Palmer and Superintendent Cruz. So board members, or perhaps we could start with questions on the presentation.
Those first, and then we could start with public comment.
Sure.
Class in both Group A and Group B. In Group A, that's the students that they're going to provide instruction in the classroom in person. And for those students in their class who don't want to come in, because there are some families that do not want synchronous instruction, but they would have to do it after their lunch break once they're done with the students in person. So the change for them is that they go from providing that in the morning to later in the afternoon.
Okay, so let me flip the question. Okay, so if there is a student the parent wants the student to go to in-person, yet his or her teacher does not volunteer to do in-person teaching, they just want to stay at distance learning, does that student go to a new teacher for in-person?
No, they stay with their classroom teacher for in-person or distance learning, depending on what they choose.
But if the teacher does not want to do in-person, wants to stay distance learning the rest of the year, what happens?
The
parent that wants and needs, and the students that we need to have in-person support would be offered a choral placement so that they would be accessing their distance learning from our learning pods like the other students are right now.
So they wouldn't get in-person teaching regardless if the teacher did not want to come in person, they would still not get in person.
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
An in-person setting.
Correct. And that's to allow for not having to reshuffle, regroup the students.
Right. Now, do we know how many parents want their child to be at school? And if once we find out, is that going to be a problem with those teachers that want to remain in distance learning? Do you foresee that as a problem?
Yeah, I can foresee some families not being happy. Just like if we did it the other way, I know we're going to have a lot of people that are unhappy if we have to reshuffle students. So you're right. There are some families that this is not going to be optimal for them. What we're trying to prioritize is the in-person support, whether it's through choral or in-person instruction for those students that are struggling to access distance learning or just need additional supports, not academically, but socially, mental health, those kinds of things. And then we can provide those when they're in our buildings.
Okay, so what if a parent requests that their student be moved to another teacher, just so they could have in-person learning? Regardless of what the teacher's preference is, what if the parent wants their child moved to an in-person classroom?
Well, there's class size, rules that we have to follow in terms of our contract.
So what if all that's met? What if all of that is met based on the new guidelines?
I mean, I wouldn't say that we would rule it out. I think we would treat, each case by case and making sure that we're not violating our bargaining contract in regards to class size. And it's more the class size reduction, the class size limits that we have in our contract more than what the guidance from public health is in that situation.
Okay, that's kind of an unfair question because I was creating a hypothesis that may or may not happen. So I understand. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? On the slides?
I had a question regarding the choral program in terms of them being able to provide the instruction to the kids. How many schools have the choral program right now, Juan?
I believe we have a total now of 11 when we added Bridges. And so I've been working with America to look at ways that we can hire more of choral staff. I will be bringing to the board a resolution to waive the testing for this year so that we can get more folks in here to support us in that way. We're also I have asked Annette to look at our sub list and see those that are willing to also come in and provide that support. We would have to work together with choral to expand our choral program. It's not something that we can just do tomorrow. The other thing that we will be looking at is just the social distancing. Now that those rules are changed, can we increase our capacity in our current cohort? So, that's so new that I have not talked to choral about, but that is something that I will be working with them in the next couple of days on.
Superintendent Cruz, can you just clarify in your comment regarding the waiving testing? Because I know that pertains to that
Yes.
may not have been understood the right way.
Yes, thank you for that. This is all our choral staff have to comply with the same testing requirement for our paraeducator under the federal mandates. And so because, some of the staff haven't been able to test or they haven't passed one or the other, we have the ability to waive the academic test that they would take if they don't have an AA degree, so that they would qualify to be in the classrooms with our students. So it's not any other type of test. So they still have to go through the whole screening, fingerprint, and all those things. It is an academic test for those candidates that don't have currently an AA degree.
And it's pertaining to staff, not students. The
Correct.
testing.
Correct.
One, I also had a question in terms of the vaccines for staff. Do we have any numbers in terms of how many, have taken the first shot, second shot, and how many are not going to get vaccinated? I'm sure there's a number out there, but do we have any ideas? And you know what? Right now we're looking at a lot of band-aid approaches right now. We know that because of circumstances. But I'm looking at the start of next school year, where I would like to have a full instruction program, in-house instruction program, if the safeguards are there and so on. But do we have any idea in terms of the numbers where we're at right now in that regard?
We do not, Board Member Sanchez, we don't. And we can't. This is HIPAA rules right now prohibit us from asking them whether they have taken or plan to take the vaccine. And right now it is not part of a mandated or required as part of employment. Unless this board wanted to take that direction, you could. But right now, neither the federal, state, or local agencies are making this a required vaccine. So that we don't know. We cannot tell you who has and who hasn't. We certainly could try and survey, but there's no obligation from them, and certainly they have every right to keep that private. So we don't know what that number looks like. For the fall, I can tell you that we are moving for a in-person for all students as minimum as a minimum for a hybrid model. That's what we are going in terms of our planning process is for that to happen.
Okay, and then that would be good. That's something I'm definitely looking forward to, and hoping again that all things fall into place, that conditions are safe and there's safeguards for everyone. But again, we just have to keep our hopes that will happen. And those are my questions right now. Thank you.
Any other questions pertaining to the presentation, board members? I did have two quick questions. One is pertaining to the schedule. Is that something that individual sites could have some level of flexibility around in terms of the timing of the cohorts coming in?
My hope would be for us to keep everything consistent across the district for support purposes, and then especially if we're providing transportation for our students and special needs students, and there are different campuses, that may be problematic. So we can certainly entertain some minor tweaks to it, campus by campus, in terms of start time and all those things. But my recommendation would be to have a consistent program across our district just for management purposes.
And then the other rationale for having the cohorts in the morning for in-person, can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Yes, in talking to parents, dropping off the students early in the morning versus midday is something that I've heard that it's easier for them to do that, and then they would stay for choral in the afternoon, and those that don't want to stay after choral and that can pick them up midday, then they would do so. That's sort of the rationale for why we presented it that way. But we certainly could invert it and make it consistent across the board, and then parents can decide whether that's going to work for them as well. I don't think there's a model that works perfect for everybody.
No, definitely understood. And then in terms of the timeline for middle school, what do we anticipate with that moving forward, or when can we expect an update?
I plan on working on this for this week and trying to get some more information, and then I already got a schedule for at least our K-8, because that's also a little different. So I'm hoping to be able to engage with our middle school and our K-8s this week and find, at least, if it's not instruction, at least an in-person support that we can provide for our 7th and 8th graders. Even if it's one day, or if it's in the afternoons when they're done with synchronous. So we will present a model for some in-person support for our middle school students, especially because they're the ones that I'm more concerned about. They're feeling isolated. There's a lot of other things that are going on with them. And so I want to be able to offer something for our 7th and 8th grade students.
Definitely. Okay, thank you.
A quick
Any other
question.
questions?
Yeah, quick
Go ahead,
follow-up
Rudy.
on that. So why are we voting? I mean, this recommendation includes middle school. Why don't we take them out of there? And because it looks like we're having in-person cohort and distance learning groups for middle school, and whereas we don't have a model yet determined. So why don't we take them out of there and make a completely different model for the middle school grades?
So I did not, thank you for that, Board Member Rodriguez. I did not update the slide here. I had changed 1 through 3 and 4 through 6, and with the note at the bottom that this was not for 7th and 8th, that further information needs to be gathered.
Okay, thank you.
Apologize for that.
Okay, yeah, I know that we have some teachers who are concerned about that, and I want to make sure that you're getting feedback from the middle school teachers on this, right?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. I knew you would. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Yeah. So what we are presenting for right now is the model for PK through 6, knowing that we also still need to work on a model for in-person support for our 7th and 8th grade students.
Thank you. Any other questions, board members, about the presentation before we go to public comments on this item?
I just have a recommendation again on the middle school, the 7th and 8th. I think that, and Juan, you mentioned about them having a greater need for social support. So I think that maybe if there's a way that we could provide more of the in-person support for those that need it, that would be great. for the middle school students, because I have a feeling that our middle school students are experiencing the least amount of learning based on their grade levels. And this is just this is unscientific, just a guess based on middle school students. So I have faith that you'll know what to do, but that's just a comment I just wanted to make.
Thank you.
Great. So if there aren't any other questions or comments on the presentation, we'll go ahead and go to public comments. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, thank you. So what I'm going to ask, since we did have members of the community that joined us as attendees, and some of you, because of that, ended up being listed as maybe making public comment. What I'm going to ask, if you would like to make public comment and you are logged in as an attendee, if you can raise your hand so I know that I don't miss you, because we have that as a list, and then we also have listed some that indicated an agenda item and some that said no or none. So I'm assuming that you just wanted to be logged in as an attendee. So I just don't want to miss anybody. So we're going to start with Scott Schulenson.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. First off, I think anytime we settle a round of bargaining as happened yesterday, we need to celebrate that we were able to reach an agreement collaboratively without the struggles that have often accompanied this process in the past in this district and many others. Now, regarding in-person instruction, it needs to be mentioned that while many other districts have forced teachers back to the classroom when their safety could not be assured, this board has allowed for a volunteer-based return this spring, and that consideration and leadership by the board and district management should be acknowledged. So thank you. Now, the big decision is what model to utilize for this volunteer-based return to in-person instruction. I appreciate that the voices of teachers and parents concerned about splitting up classes so late in the year have been heard, and the reaction from management has been to offer a model that would allow for classes to remain whole. There are also other models out there that are popular at some schools, including models of having teachers work with roughly half the class in person, while the rest of the students would watch the instruction on a live stream from home. Other teachers prefer to continue with distance learning in the morning, but want to bring in small groups for in-person intervention in the afternoon. I know it may be less than ideal from a management standpoint, but I can't help thinking that offering different options to different schools would bring about the greatest number of teacher volunteers and would also allow the district to try on more models so that we have more experience to draw from as we plan for the fall. Regardless of what model or models is chosen, I appreciate the board's thoughtful consideration of teacher and parent concerns, and you're allowing those not comfortable to return in person at this time to continue working safely from home through the end of this school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other comments, Superintendent Cruz?
Yeah, so we have Christina Blaylock.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, hello and good evening to all. My name is Christina Blaylock, and I am a mother of 2 students who attend FMSD, and I am also a teacher. There are many of us that are concerned about our students attending school, and that now is the time to reconvene and get back to normalcy. And I can understand the concerns and points of view. The struggle is real. Students need the stability and comfort of their teachers and peers. Yes, they need an environment to thrive. We all do. We all need compassion, thoughtfulness, consideration. And although it is not ideal that a student who is suffering due to the lack of social interaction or the learning environment continue to do distance learning, but is also cumbersome. At this point in time, your student, although it may be, is in front of a computer for however long it may be or how difficult it is to learn, still has the affection of your teacher to learn. They will guide you through and support you in any way possible if you just ask. We are dedicated and have chosen this path to educate. We love our students. Teachers who choose to be in the classroom, however, due to the circumstances, requires a lot more effort and hard work to start a class than you realize. The management, procedures, routines, organization, expectations, guidelines, communication, and relationships with students, families, and colleagues are very arduous and will require more than the 6 weeks. The ramifications of beginning a new start to the last 7 weeks is unfair to students, especially to those that will have to start anew. Students who have already made relationships with their teachers and peers can encourage and guide them. Therefore, from a parent and teacher perspective, I believe that the use of time would be better used if we continue with the remaining time the rest of the year with distance learning and then begin the transition period with summer school. It would be beneficial not only to our students, but to teachers as well. Thank you and good evening. Mind you, this was written also too before the proposed models. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Christina. Other public comments?
I have a couple of other people that I have on the list and did not indicate an agenda item. So I just I'm going to call you. And if you are wanting to give public comment, I would ask that you raise your hand so I can go ahead and unmute you. Maria da Silva, Julie Johnson, Lisa Hirakawa, Nelly Vilma, Marlene Bonomo, and Tayuki Karashani. Okay, it looks like they had just signed up for logging in for the meeting, board president.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, if there, I'll just open up to any other questions or comments from the board.
Are we voting on this?
Yeah, I would like to move that we accept the in-person recommendation for PK to 6th grade.
Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second the motion. So any additional discussion or comments?
How soon would we start with this if we do some changes in terms of direct instruction? How fast would this come about?
It's April 19th, George.
In the next week or so?
April 19th.
What's that?
April 19th.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the earliest would be April 19th. Obviously, we would not start April 19th if we didn't have all the safety protocols and the classrooms all set up.
Okay.
If the board chooses to move, on this tonight, facilities is ready to start identifying with the schools the classrooms that will need to be set up. And our hope would be to be ready by the 19th.
And I just want to recognize and commend our staff and stakeholders, our educators for their feedback and input in this process so that our district administration can make the best recommendation moving forward while also keeping the safety and well-being of our students and staff and community at the forefront. So I appreciate this recommendation. Any other questions, comments before I move to the roll call vote?
Yeah, I did have a quick clarification question on the middle school 7th and 8th. Juan, are you we don't need to vote on something for that, or are you just going to come up with a plan and then let us know?
Yeah, if it's okay with the board, I would obviously communicate with you what the plan is, and that we would look for an in-person support for students in 7th and 8th that meets the safety guidelines that are part of this recommendation. Okay,
so then at worst, it would remain at 7th and 8th would remain at distance learning with some in-person support for counseling or advising or tutoring, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And can we anticipate that update by the next board meeting as well?
Yes.
Okay. Right, so if there are no other questions, comments, I'm going to move to a roll call vote. So this is for item 5.01, the in-person instructional model for targeted students as recommended by district administration. Board Member Sanchez.
I still have reservations, but I'll vote aye with reservations.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
And my vote, name on F Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to item 5.02, the Social Worker Awareness Month Student Support Services presentation. And I believe Jennifer Clausen, you here?
Yes.
I
Yes,
am.
we have Jennifer Clausen, Brenda Salcedo, and Van Pham that are going to be providing you this presentation. This is again, I think it's timely, as we've just talked about, distance learning and the different things that we're seeing with our students and the different supports that have been provided. And so I'll turn it over to them at this time.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Board President and members of the board and the school community. Thank you for having us tonight. As you heard, I'm joined with Brenda Salcedo and Van Pham, one of our school social workers, and we're going to be talking about School Social Work Month and the work that our team has been engaging with over the past year as we moved into distance learning. And so, next slide, please. So we start with our beliefs always. We hold our beliefs as we engage in this work every single day in believing that our students, deserve pathways to support, recognizing different learning needs, and making sure that we just hold these beliefs as we engage in practices and policies that are going to support our overall student success. We always like to include our beliefs in our work. Next slide, please. So Social Work Month is March, and school social workers are trained professionals, that are in our school communities and have gone through a series of educational experiences around being in schools and providing direct and indirect services in the school community. We're trained mental health professionals. We are part of the certificated staff, and we are working at a micro, meso, and macro level in providing supports to students, staff, families, and the community at large. Next slide, please. Our team is grown. Our team is getting bigger every day, which is very exciting through different partnerships and different ways that we're able to bring new staff on board. It's really, really exciting that we've been able to integrate into our existing support staff of school psychologists, academic counselors, and we've been able to create such a important piece to the puzzle of ensuring our students' success. Our school social workers are there, our schooling services coordinators, and we have a rather large intern program that we're proud of with San Jose State University. And then of course our administrators and our UAP staff. Next slide, please. School social workers are integral to this system. You might often hear that school social workers are community-based organization staff, or they only provide direct service at a certain level. And the reality is we are in everything. And we've been trying to, over the past 4 or 5 years, ensure that our voices are at the table, that we're thought partners with our staff, and we attend staff meetings, and we're a part of SSTs, and anything that's really integral to promoting student and staff and family success, we are involved at a very core level. And so we've been, again, working hard to be visual, on campus, to be in classrooms, to be in sitting with teachers, in the staff lounge, in the playground, wherever we can be is where we find that we are going to promote student success at a very real, intentional, meaningful level. Next slide, please. So school social workers, again, are relatively new, but we have built a robust system. Data collection is one of those things that is not high on our list of things we like to do, but we have to do it. We are legally and ethically obligated to collect data. And although we want data to tell a story, we also have data to protect ourselves and others. And so one of the new programs we brought on recently that I'll focus on is Welligent. We are consistently having to capture notes, group notes, individual notes, how we work with students, the services we provide. And Welligent is a system that allows us to capture data within their system. So individual direct services, indirect services, progress notes, crisis notes, anything we do, any touch points we have with students are able to be captured into the system. And what we like about a system such as Welligent is it builds capacity to look at data holistically and to build a story and share outcomes of how our services and supports impacted students. So we're excited along the next year or so as we work with Welligent to be able to have a robust system and an evaluatory system that we're able to show what our supports and services did and how they impacted students' lives. The other one I'll talk about, you know Infinite Campus probably pretty well, but we're excited to be able to shift our referral system into Infinite Campus next year. Always trying to make it easier on teachers and staff to submit a referral for students, right? We want that ease of use. We want to make sure it's intentional and thoughtful to have teachers not have to go through a lot of different data systems to submit a referral. So Infinite Campus is going to be the way that we streamline our service delivery model and have teachers be able to quickly submit a referral for a student that they're concerned about. So we're excited to be launching that in August. Next slide, please. So the pandemic brought some changes and shifts to the way that we deliver services as a team. And just like everyone else, we had to respond and shift how we served students, how we worked with families, and how we worked with the school community. And so next slide, please. So part of what we did is we adjusted our structure, and I think you might remember this from back in March or so, when we really tried to shift to a protect, connect, support model. We wanted to make sure we still had eyes on kids. We wanted to make sure there was still a safety lens to how we were working with families and kids. And we wanted to make sure we were supporting our school community in a different way that still prioritized safety and the well-being of our students. Next slide. So prioritizing adults. This is an area of focus that is not new, but we believe it's become even more significant that the adults in our system have opportunities to reflect on current events, to process all the difficulties the pandemic has brought in, and really lean into that work of supporting colleagues and students in a much different way. And so I start with adults because I know that when our adults are healthy and supportive and have the resources they need, they will be that much better, right, able to be present and receive our kids however they come to us. And so some of the ways that we did that was through professional learning. We were able to provide staff with supports and resources and presentations around social emotional learning and distance learning. You'll see the slide from our early learning social worker who was able to create some different ways of engaging with students with SEL. So wanted to lift up social emotional learning and help our adults build capacity to understand what SEL is. We also focused on wellness, having self-care events and yoga classes, different ways that our school social workers came together with our school community to make sure that our adults could access resources, right, such as yoga, mindfulness, and self-care. And support. Unfortunately, we know this year has brought many challenges and difficulties around the country. And it was really important that school social workers were present in the way that we provided healing circles, for example, bringing staff together to process, right, whatever event may have been happening over the past year. And so our social workers have been able to lead circles with staff, virtual circles. Very difficult to lead a virtual circle if you haven't done it or experienced it. It's very difficult. And so we rose to the challenge of meeting that need and really leaning into that work, as we knew it was still important to ensure our staff were getting what they needed. We provided consultation hours on campus right before the pandemic. It was really easy to find your school social worker, to find a teacher, to talk about a student, talk about a referral. Shifting our practices meant we had to create virtual consultation hours. And so all of our social workers have at least an hour where staff can pop in, check in on a kid, ask questions, get resources, process anything they needed, or just vent, right, about what's going on. And so those consultation hours have been very effective. They're different times at every site and run a little bit differently, but we wanted to be able to provide that for staff so they had a way to access support even in these times. Next slide. So supporting students, as we moved in, right, to distance learning, we came together as a team and had very thoughtful conversations around how to support students while still maintaining a sense of connectedness, engagement, and safety. Those are sort of our big priority areas. And so some of the ways that we did that was bringing in a system called BARC, which I think you've heard about, and it is an online monitoring system. We've had so many referrals on BARC that it's really hard to keep up with it because it's monitoring chats and Gmails of our FMSD platform. And so you'll see there are over 800 alerts so far, and it will pick up things such as suicidal ideation, homicidal thoughts or content, graphic pictures, distress, conversations that are really concerning to staff, and we'll get an alert and we'll be able to respond to that immediately. Our student wellness referrals, again, we've had over 1,500 referrals, and happy to say that over half of them have been linked to services. Our virtual wellness rooms, again, thinking about shifting from being in our office on campus, we created, just like many social workers across the country, virtual wellness rooms. And it's a place where students can press on a book and read a story about mindfulness, self-regulation, how to calm yourself, or just build awareness about the world around them. We still continue doing virtual support groups, individual counseling, crisis intervention, with over 1,500 student contacts. And then My Health First is a new program that Brenda's actually going to talk to in a little bit. And it was part of our desire to still make sure kids were safe and well throughout this challenging time. So Brenda's going to talk about how that was introduced to Franklin-McKinley and some of the outcomes around the My Health First project. Next slide, please. So school social worker-led events, we wanted to have fun still, right? We knew that kids are faced with having to log in and do their work. And so we wanted to make sure that we came together as a community and still try to promote fun events while recognizing that the research around protective factors, right? If you are reading the ACE study or you're familiar with the trauma-informed work, protective factors really can lessen, right, the impact of trauma. And so protective factors can be anything from having supportive adults in your life to having a positive view of school, having positive peers, right? And so we wanted to capitalize on protective factors in order to try to minimize the impact that this pandemic has brought to our kids. And so some of the events that we had, which Van's going to talk about, is really student-centered, really inclusive, creating a sense of belonging for our kids. So we had student-centered events, part of the community, we're out there presenting within our Santa Clara County community. And then I talked a little bit about circles. But I really want to have Van share some of the ways that she was able to bring fun and also, again, try to create a sense of protectiveness so our kids maybe didn't experience the level of trauma that they might have without having these events. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and I think Van is on. Hey, so I'm going to turn it over to Van.
Thank you. My name is Van Pham, and I'm one of Franklin-McKinley's 8 school social workers. Our Swiss team, which also includes our 2 SLS coordinators and a team of school social work interns, have collaborated with our site admin, our teachers, and even our students to lead different types of student activity events for each of our school sites. Each school and their Swiss members hosted creative and community building events catered to each unique school campus across the district. But in general, we wanted to make a large effort to host these events for students virtually in hopes of supporting student communities through increased engagement, increased student connection to their school communities, and overall just community building. Next slide, please. Each school has done creative and fun activities for their students, including virtual games, bingo night, poster contests, and drawing classes. These events have mostly been held during asynchronous time, like on a school-wide level, but also in classrooms during synchronous time or even after school as family game nights. In a time when we're so far apart and we can feel so disconnected, our team found it really important to host these events to promote community and togetherness. We promoted our events through flyers like these. Can you go to the next slide, please? Oh. Actually, you can go back 2 slides for the flyers. Thank you. So we promoted our events through flyers like these. Our social workers and our SLS coordinator translated them into English, Spanish, and Vietnamese when possible. We work with students to create these flyers or brainstorm ideas with them about what kind of events they were interested in attending. We plan to engage more with student voice as we plan and prepare for in-person learning in August. Our social workers have already virtually led student focus groups to collect information about how students feel about their distance learning experience and their education looking forward. These events have been in collaboration with our site administrators in planning and our teachers in helping us spread the word by providing Zoom links to their students through Clever, or even just reminding their students about the events during their classes. Next slide, please. I personally support 3 different campuses, McKinley, Ramblewood, and Franklin, and I decided to hold these events virtually, where all 3 of my sites were invited and welcome to log on to our Zoom link. Most times we're learning how to draw or sharing our art with our peers or playing group games. The goal was to create a safe and inclusive environment for students, which meant learning how to navigate Zoom functions to accommodate to a virtual space for students to feel comfortable. At the beginning of each of my events, we remind students that they are welcome to come and leave as they want or keep their camera on or off. We strive to create safe environments for our students to be a part of and have seen great attendance at these events as a result. The student events that I've hosted with my social work intern have an average of about 90 to 100 students in attendance from all 3 campuses. We most often host drawing classes at least twice a month, where students learn to draw subjects that they like. Last week, for example, we led a Baby Yoda drawing class by popular demand of the students. And at the end of each class, we leave plenty of time for students to take turns to be spotlighted and proudly share their work with the rest of the class. And while that student is showcasing their work on Spotlight, other students will give out kudos or compliments to the spotlighted artists. And you can just kind of see their faces like beam with pride. It's my favorite part of the class. Next slide, please. Our team additionally made efforts to celebrate diversity and inclusion by leading different cultural events for Lunar New Year, Black History Month, and even Women's History Month this month. This was important to us as to expose students to different cultures and perspectives, as well as representing the cultures that reflect our students and our families and making sure that they felt well represented in our events. Next slide, please.
Hi, my name is Brenda Salcedo, and I'm an administrator in the Student Wellness and Support Services Department, and I'm going to be talking about My Health First. My Health First is an innovative pilot program developed with our partners at the Healthier Kids Foundation, designed to provide wellness check-ins for all 5th grade students. 5th grade students were selected since it was an expansion of the physical health screenings they were already scheduled to receive. This pilot program is currently only offered in the Franklin-McKinley School District. We initially started our conversation with our partners at the Healthier Kids Foundation last school year. We thought we were going to be conducting these wellness checks in person. However, we needed to adapt to complete these check-ins virtually, as we understand that student wellness was important, especially during the pandemic. FMSD social workers, coupled with the physician and Healthier Kids Foundation parent advocate, completed over 375 screenings virtually between late October and early March of this year. Parents provided consent virtually, and a Healthier Kids Foundation parent advocate scheduled appointments with the family directly. Wellness checks were approximately 15 minutes in length, and students needing additional support were then followed up with by the school social worker. Sample questions included were, what is the best thing about you that you would like to tell us? And what is one way you help a friend who is upset? This groundbreaking program is expected to continue and expand through the next school year. Next slide.
Thank you, team. So attendance and engagement. The pandemic has really brought to light, right, how difficult it has been for some families to show up every day, right, for kiddos to log in, roll out of bed, right, turn their cameras on, and engage in a way that we never thought they would have to. And for some, students have reported that they've actually enjoyed distance learning, and they like being at home, and they like to have the independence of distance learning. So while there's a variety of responses to distance learning, we have certainly seen that it has proven to be difficult for students to show up every single day. and supports and resources around attendance and engagement have shifted a little bit, right, to be able to respond in a way where we can't just go to the home and do home visits, but we have to really be mindful and intentional about family engagement. And so you'll see in a little bit how we coordinated with Catholic Charities to be able to respond in a different way. So some of the ways that we have looked at attendance and engagement is coordination of services. We worked with Catholic Charities as a partnership. We know that they are instrumental in providing supports to FMSD. And along the way of looking at students who were engaging, not engaging, we found that we needed to have a system of supports to be able to have staff go to homes, right, in a safe, socially distanced way. And Catholic Charities stepped up to the partnership and said, we will absolutely have our staff support in providing home visits. And we worked in this program in a very short amount of time, but what they did is they went out after hours, their CASIs went out after hours on the weekends, trying to find families and engage with students who were otherwise not showing up, missing. We didn't know where they were and we could not get a hold of them. So it was really important to have that sort of tier 3 service provided for kids that we hadn't seen. We don't have eyes on these kids. And so we have conducted over 149 home visits, and we are now starting to look at outcomes of those home visits. Students have been connected to Coral, students have been connected to housing resources, if there was evictions going on, COVID-related concerns with families. So they are able to gather information for us and bring it back to our social work team. And together, as a partnership, we're able to brainstorm and triage what's needed in the immediate moment. And it may not be showing up to school. The immediate need for that family might be housing. Right. And so we're able to sort of look at the barriers to attending and together in partnership, figure out how we can help the students be more successful and come back to school. So that was one of the new coordinated services we offered this year. Student support, again, you'll see some flyers there. We wanted to create awareness. We wanted to still provide check-in, check-out with our students that were not attending or struggling. So check in the morning, check out in the afternoon, virtually through Zoom or through the phone. Creating plans, right, to support students with IEPs who weren't attending. So our school social workers are instrumental in coming to the table and really being a partner and a thoughtful partner, engaging with student supports. Access to infrastructure. So the technology around Illuminate and just the different platforms we had to engage with, our school social work team partnered with our staff and teachers to create an environment where we could all learn from each other as we were learning this new way of taking attendance, right? Because we had to have the data to support where the kids are. So we did a lot of capacity building together as a team, just to be able to find out which kids were attending, which kids we needed to respond to. Next slide, please. Early learning is new this year with our social worker, not early learning, but our social worker is new this year through the Starting Smart and Strong work with the Packard Foundation, which we're entering into our 6th year. We have a school social worker who is dedicated to early learning. And we love this because we know our little ones, right? The investment we provide in the beginning, right, will carry through a successful educational career and lifelong career for these kids. So we really wanted to intentionally focus on school social work with our littles. And so you can see here the work that she's done in just a short amount of time. Some of the highlights are the consultation hour with teachers and caregivers. She shifted a little bit and had teachers first, but then turned into a family engagement consultation hour. Families could drop in, access supports, resources, again, vent if needed about what's happening, what challenges are happening with the little ones, and really receive that intentional support with her. She has done presentations and really engaged with the teachers, pushing into the classrooms, providing a level of support that's different than, the traditional, right, academic session, right, in distance learning. So she's able to provide a more social emotional learning perspective when we think about integrating SEL with academics. She's been really able to model that for our teachers, and we're really happy to have her join our team this year. Next slide. Families, our families are important to support this year. We have done many events and many individual contacts with families, as we know that we're being in families' homes, right, has presented a different dynamic, both for our teachers and for our school social workers. We worked really hard to partner with our community providers in providing basic needs, connecting families to the program through the County of Santa Clara, right? If there are COVID-related concerns, our UAP staff, together with Brenda's support and the school social workers, have been working strategically to ensure that families are able to access resources provided by the county. We've also been able to train our providers in our community around suicide prevention, early intervention, to make sure that our providers, if they were seeing crises with kids, were able to respond effectively. You'll see some of the flyers there for Parent University and for our early learning parent hour. Next slide, please. Some data snapshots. We have increased our contacts this year with our kiddos. And I think one important highlight is our wellness check-ins. And these check-ins were not only through the wellness link we provided on our website, but also through the My Health First check-ins that Brenda talked about. So you can see the number of supports, of touch points that we've had with both students, parents, and CBOs. Next slide, please. Some high-level data. Referrals that we've received by grade level. So you can see that 5th grade looks like the highest, and it is because it's My Health First, really, that the referrals came in, which kind of bumped up our numbers in 5th grade. As kids were getting served through the wellness checks, they were also getting referred for additional services, whether it was family needs or just individual student needs. Next slide, please. Some of the reasons for referral, I don't think it's any surprise that most of the referrals came in for participation and engagement and chronic absenteeism. Our teachers have been incredibly mindful of submitting referrals for kiddos that are either falling off the radar or kids that are hovering at a very low percentage, right, of outcomes with their educational work. And so we've seen the referrals come in for kids that are not participating, not engaging, and I really have relish that partnership with our teachers and our staff for just being connected to our families and supporting our kids through the referral process. You can see that on the bottom, we've had over a 50% success rate of linking kids to services. That can be our community partners, it can be educational services, one-time services. So we're pretty happy that we've been able to link kids successfully to services. Next slide. What's next? We want to finish out the year strong. We are looking at actively ensuring that the rest of this year, as we just heard, right, about in-person supports and how we're coming back together in spring and summer and August. And so we want to be mindful about finishing this year, right, in a way that still supports our students and staff and families, and also planning for August for the return to in-person. So some of the ways we're thinking about engaging and planning for next year is through listening sessions. We're going to hold classified and certificated listening sessions, as well as student listening sessions and family listening sessions. And we want to gather some meaningful data around what's needed, what challenges they're facing, what ideas they have for either professional learning for our staff as we come back together, or just what's on their mind. I think having that space to then hopefully gather that data and provide some well-intentioned trainings or learning opportunities for our staff to, whether it's healing or whether it's just talking about the impact of the pandemic or thinking about returning to in-person altogether. So some of those plans for listening sessions are going to be over the next month or so, and we're going to use those to strengthen our plans to come back. I think, next slide. This is our these are our community partners. We have really thrived having our community partners with us this year. They have been instrumental in providing services virtually, whether it's therapeutic service through Zoom, shifting their practices, aligning with us, building a cohesive model for distance learning that has been able to really hold whatever our kids are going through and keep our families safe. So we're thankful for our partners. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, Van, and Brenda, for that thorough presentation. Board members, are there any questions or comments? Did we lose? I guess I'm not seeing everyone on my screen.
Muted.
So
yeah, George is muted. He's trying to talk.
Okay.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that presentation to Van and Brenda. In terms of next year, and I know you mentioned a lot of things. So before even next year starts, what are some things you're going to do to kind of get everything prepared as students come back on that first day? So are you going out to staffs before even school starts during those in-service days? Is that what your plans are at this time?
Yeah, thank you for that. We are absolutely putting plans in place now to be able to create learning environments for our staff to engage with each other around mental health, well-being. Where the shift from trauma-informed to healing-centered. While trauma-informed is still important, we know healing-centered is a way to actually heal from whatever's going on. And so we're working with a few different agencies right now to put a series of professional learning opportunities together. Again, starting with the adults, right? We want to make sure we focus on prioritizing adults' needs and whatever they need to come back together in person. So through now in June, we'll have several different professional learning opportunities, synchronously and asynchronously, around different topics that will be some opt-in, some will be universal for all staff. And I know that Mr. Cruz has been engaging in conversations around intentional planning to ensure that it's cohesively aligned to ed services, business, that we're all together and sort of how we're coming back together and providing opportunities for our adults. Mr. Cruz, if you want to add to any of that.
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of work to be done between now and August, and we want to start, with some things that the teachers can opt in, right? And we're being mindful that there's a lot on teachers' plate, and we want to be able to provide what is being asked, but also being mindful that they may not have the bandwidth right now, and so some may and some might not, and so it's going to be sort of those optional things between now and June. And then obviously we want to use the 2 days that we have before school starts as well, to come together and look at the ways that we're going to support adults and support students coming back in the building. So there's a lot of planning that is going on right now, and we're starting with some of those optional items for between now and June.
So some of the things we're looking at are restorative practices, right? We're starting with a whole school approach at Sylvandale. They'll go through a whole school restorative training, and we'll also have restorative training offered for other staff in the district as we build capacity around restorative practices over the next few years. Implicit bias training, our MTSS training, our healing-centered training, mental health, what to expect, how do we, what to expect when kids come back, what do we need to be prepared for, right? Knowing that we can't really be prepared because we don't know what they're going to bring, but what can we maybe expect and be kind of a little more prepared for as we are in the classroom, right? So building practices and capacities with our staff. Again, we want to listen to them, we want to hear what's needed, and then also develop a plan in response to what we know is best practice and research evidence-based.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, board members?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So going back to the restorative justice, you mentioned that you're going to start off with the middle school, so Sylvandale, and so then at what point will that expand to the rest of the district?
Thank you. Sylvandale was ready, right, to bring restorative practices in. They've done some of the groundwork to have staff ready and lay the foundation. So we're confident that they are ready to engage in the restorative practices training for educators, which is a 2-day training. We also have a theory of practice training for our administrators to go deeper into restorative practices. Again, we want to build leadership capacity, right, to be able to hold the conversation with staff. It's hard to bring it to a school when your leaders don't have, right, the knowledge and awareness and understanding of what that is. So we want to build some deeper capacity with our administrators. And then we have a train the trainer program that we're engaging with the Institute for Restorative Practices. A few of our social workers have already attended that training. And so the train the trainer will be offered for either a team of people, but also all of our social workers to be able to then build capacity internally to then provide training to our sites so we can go quicker, right? If we had to wait for an organization to do it, it could take a long time. So we want to intentionally build capacity with our staff to be able to provide the 2-day training to our schools. So over the next couple of years, we will have everyone trained. And then we have to, right, restorative practices, you have to continuously, right, build capacity and reinforce the practices over time. So it's not something that's easy to do if anyone's done it. It does take time, and it takes a district, right, approach to really move the needle and shift the mindset, right? And the discourse around what it means to be restorative, right? And that we're a restorative community. So those are 3 of our plans: whole school approach, starting with our administrators, and then a train the trainer model.
Then ultimately, it could take up to 2 years for the entire district to be fully trained in this area. And that's on top of the MTSS as well.
Right.
Well, I would just say that it's encompassing within the MTSS that the restorative practice is a component of an MTSS model. So we know that we have to phase it in terms of just capacity. But one of the things that we want to do with the trainers is make sure that all teachers get a level of training around how to create community within the class as we come back. And that's something that is going to be universal for all staff across the district. It's not fully implementing restorative practices, but it's a component of how to build community, which is part of restorative practices.
And I think with that, I have to say, as we think about building community in circles, that we do it from, right, inequity from a social justice mindset, right? And we really are intentional about how we're creating community within the classroom, right? Because we have to come at it from a lens of supporting kids culturally, right? And really honor where they're coming from. So that takes, right, more work. That's the hard work, right? The deep work that it's going to take, along with the work I know the DEEP committee's doing. So the alignment to make sure that we do it right from the beginning, it's going to take some effort of all of us.
Any other questions or comments? I think my questions are captured as well, but just thank you once again to our presenters. I really enjoyed learning about the specific activities that our social workers are doing at our school sites with students, and as well as the My Health First initiative that's really exciting for our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move to item 5.03, the FMCI Family Resource Center presentation.
Yes, and I'd like to invite Elizabeth Alvarez to join us. I think she just turned on her camera, has been listening. And this is one of those initiatives that the district has engaged for a while, but we are now trying to replicate some of the best practices from the FMCI model that has served Santee as we look at the other FRCs. And they've had to, just like you heard our student supports presentation right now, they've had to pivot and supporting our families, our community with responding to the pandemic. So I want to turn it over to Elizabeth at this point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and share the great things that we've been doing over the last year, and share some testimonies, and just, I only have 15 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to go deep or even do justice to all of our amazing programs. But I'll go over a few of them, and then also invite you to reach out to me if you want to know more, just because there's so much to discuss. And if you can go to the next slide. So we are located specifically in the Santee neighborhood, and we started there about 10 years ago in 2010 with a planning grant from the Packard Foundation, working alongside the community, being responsive and proactive, and really focusing on prevention, building a community-wide initiative. We have since grown. We started off in a little portable on the Santee campus, and a small little tiny portable that was city owned on district property at where now we have the Educare FRC. And with 1.25 staff at the time, I was a 0.25 at the time, and now we're a little over 25 full-time staff throughout the FMSD. And we opened up a couple of years ago at the Seven Trees FRC at Dan Laidon, and also incorporated the Family Resource Center at Dahl. But really excited. We have about funding approximately $2.5 million that we bring into the district. A small part is directly funded by the district, but most of it comes from private foundations as well as city and county contracts that we're able to secure. But really excited about doing the work in a very comprehensive, holistic, strength-based approach, working with families and I really identifying the needs and focusing on strengths. Next slide, please. These are some of the programs that we provide. So we do two things. We do convening as well as direct service. These are some of the direct services that we provide. A lot of them really focused intentionally on early education. Early on, that we made the decision to focus as early as possible in doing intervention and supporting the whole family. One of the programs that we do, actually one that Jennifer mentioned, is a bottom right, the FMSD home visiting. But we have many other programs that we do. One that I'd really like to highlight is a county funded program called Parent Cafe. And this one has had a specific, an interesting story just because we are in our third year of providing this service. It's actually a child abuse prevention program, really also focused on strengths and developing families as support systems. And this was the first program that we were able to go virtual. One of the things that we knew and prior to the initial lockdown, we saw it was coming and we really planned as thoughtfully as we could to how to make sure that we kept our families connected to services and resources as well as kept our staff employed. In our world, if we don't do the work, we don't get paid, right? And our teams, we were really focused on making sure how, when we do have shelter in place, are we going to make sure that we still maintain that connection with our communities and focused on the wellness calls and a lot of other things that I'll tell you more about right now. Next slide, please. So we really did only have one day of break. Actually, yeah, that slide, correct. We really did only have one day. We worked really hard ahead of the shelter in place and focused on communicating with our funders because we obviously couldn't do what we originally had planned to do, eliminating the in-person work, but also got really creative on how we were still going to execute some of the activities that we could do going virtual, as well as our funders being very flexible and changing our scope of work to do a lot more of the essential supplies distribution, a lot of connecting with families with resources that they really needed. And just to make sure that you all know is that we are emergency responders. As Catholic Charities, we're a nonprofit. We are considered an emergency responder organization. And what that really means is if there's a flood like we had years ago, right down from where you're at, we go into action, as well as now during this pandemic, that we are trained, prepared, and know that we have to sometimes, drop in a dime and move on a dime. And also thinking about, the next earthquake that potentially we've been planning for quite some time. And this is an image of Rosalia, and this was our version of pop-up parks. For those of you that have attended pop-up parks during the summertime, there are these huge community events that we have hundreds of people come out, multiple generations in a household that just come hang out, grandma, little ones, parents. We provide dinner and a lot of fun activities. We did bingo here, but we have to find the joy and bringing people together. And at this point, people were so hungry to just engage with each other. A lot of our work originally was just kind of clarifying There was a lot of confusion, a lot of just people being afraid of what is out there. And we saw extremes, people that were not really paying attention to the reality, and then some that were, became very, very afraid. And I think that's still present. Our zip code 95122, where Santee is located, it was one of the largest hotspots, and we know pretty much why is that folks still had to keep working, right? And if you have a job, you still have to work and provide for your family for fear of not being able to, to pay the bills or become evicted and homeless, as well as people do live in crowded conditions. We have apartments with two, 3 families and only 2-bedroom apartments. So it is very real. Sometimes when we become disconnected from it, we don't understand that part, but for our families, it's very real every day. Next slide, please. Another big part of our response was really focusing on food. And, some of you may know, we went from providing monthly doll, I think it was 250, 300 food every week to, actually once a month to every week. At one point we got up to 700 people that were driving by collecting food. It has since decreased a tiny bit. I think right now we're at 2 times a month. So things we can tell very much how much what's happening in the community based on who's coming to collect food, as well as worked with other providers to be able to provide PPP, to be able to do a lot of still ongoing support, like the family kits, activity kits. People really needed other things to do besides, when people are struggling for, to pay bills, it's kind of hard to buy, a new puzzle or anything else. And so we made these different packages called activity kits to be able to give people so that they had other manipulatives to be engaged. And we also did a deep investment in our staff training and staff testing of what are the things that are working for families and what can we continue to share, as well as training of our teams to conduct these classes and virtual activities. Next slide, please. One of the programs that we are funded directly through the district, through the Packard Foundation, is our FFN work and our family, friend, and neighbor. So this was in person previous to COVID. I think here you have a couple of folks coming in to collect some activities so that they could go and do at home. But we're still doing these trainings. We just had a training this past Saturday. But we really have had to change our approach in the way that we do deliver the services, really rich in content, and from training people to how to use Zoom to really being intentional about nurturing the relationships that people were just so hungry to have, and learn from each other. Next slide, please. And here you see some images of some of the programs and the kids opening up activity kits, and also a virtual session. And, again, like I can't tell you like the growth that we've seen in the community. People that I never thought would be online doing classes, participating in classes, like the learning curve has been great, but it has also been so impressive. We know that there's just been so much isolation and so much distress, and it really has been an opportunity to engage in different ways. And we've been doing a lot of evaluation and discussion around what are the things that we are going to keep after COVID, right? Because we've grown so much, our staff capacity and the community's capacity to do certain things that, really taking advantage of the opportunity to learn and have this time. Next slide, please. Here's one story of Mike B, who has 2 kids that are in FMSD, and he wanted to start volunteering. He had a pending court date and wanted to show the judge that he was being proactive. Also, we referred them to Bridge to Recovery, other Catholic Charities programs. But I think when you think of FMCI, don't think of FMCI as just one program of Family Resource Center that you get, access to multiple parent curriculums. Think of us as a whole entire agency plus partners that do the work to support families. So you can access immigration services if people need it, or access to financial resources, as well as connections to outside organizations. And he was also able to get a Chromebook, a hotspot, participate in our digital literacy program, and has also shared that he is going to go back to take some college classes, and as he plans to restart his career. And next slide. Here, we also have another mom, a mama from Santee School. And some of you may know her or remember her, but she cooks wonderful meals during staff celebrations. And she also experienced a car burglary, and we were able to support her in getting access to other resources that she wouldn't have had access with if not for the connection to FMCI. And we also have a couple of really awesome success stories. I really hope the videos work. If you can jump to the next slide, please. And I'm going to ask Samir to.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Ceja. I am happily married and the mother of 3 beautiful children. A friend of mine invited me to participate in a program, and after that I just kept going. I have since participated in programs such as Parents Cafes, digital literature, Parent Child Plus, life skills. Going to all of these programs has definitely helped me become a better parent, a better community member, and a better person overall. I suffer from depression, and I truly believe that getting involved with Catholic Charities after the pandemic has saved my life. I feel very excited for what's to come, and I feel very proud of what I have accomplished, and very grateful for all of the opportunities that I have been given. And I have realized that it's never too late to follow and accomplish your dreams.
Thank you. And we can go to the next slide. And we have Melixa. Please play.
Hello, my name is Melixa Pauline. I'm 41 years old. I've been married for 21 years old. I have 2 daughters, and I've been living in the McKinley neighborhood for 24 years. And I've been participating in some programs from Catholic Charities, and one of them is the Parents Cafes. And it's been helping me a lot with my anxiety and depression, and also it's encouraging me to get involved in more programs. Also, I love I want more persons to get involved in this kind of programs. I believe they are really good. They give you good influence and also help you with a lot of daily things that you do with your family and your kids.
Thank you. And next slide, please.
Mi nombre es Ileana Estrada, soy mamá de 4 hijos y pertenecemos al distrito de Franklin-McKinley desde hace 5 años. Por medio de ello asistimos al centro comunitario aproximadamente 3 años. Soy voluntaria y nos hemos beneficiado de programas para papás que ofrecen caridades católicas. Es como nos hemos fortalecido como familia y nos seguimos nutriendo de ellos. Gracias.
So these 5 lovely individuals, you know, they all have a different experience in connecting with different programs. And I can't tell you enough, like how proud I am of our staff, our team that continues to build relationships with families, continues to support and be connections, as well as really help to guide individuals to finding the resources that they need to flourish. And we really have, you know, taken this pandemic, learned a great deal, changed rapidly, and been able to galvanize and really like leverage and double down on all of the amazing assets we had, and to create even stronger networks and support families through really, really difficult times. These are some of the partners that we have been working with, and you know, also appreciating our funders from, you know, First Five to the Packard Foundation to the district, the city, the county programs that we've been able to just be really creative and supporting families, as well as, you know, continuing to you know, focus on our skills and really connect with families in a much deeper, emotionally connected way. It has been very hard for so many of our families and our staff, because easily a lot of our staff live and work in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. We recently had a partners meeting last week, I think. This was a picture of our old partners meeting. We had this, this is an event that we have, usually we had it every year. This was 2019 because we skipped last year. And we're hoping, this was actually a meet and greet event that we had at Bridges Academy 2019. And we are planning to do our next one in a month and a half or so, trying to secure the date. But this is one of the convening activities that we do through FMCI. And really the purpose of it is breaking silos. Like in this picture, you see multiple organizations working and connecting with the San Jose Police Department, because we realized early on that we all have different parts of service. Some of us are in prevention, intervention, and some of us do enforcement. And most of us carry multiple hats at different times. So it really is trying to build those connections between partner organizations to better serve, at the end of the day, to better serve the community. And next slide. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
And if I just could add, you know, we are now working on launching an additional family resource center that will be located here across from the district office to serve the Shirakawa Rock Springs community. And so that is in partnership with the City of San Jose. Council member Esparza has given some seed money, and then First Five has committed to opening the facility. You know, July 1 would be sort of the launch, and so we're hoping to be able to have a ribbon cutting in person in July, and so we'll make sure that everybody gets the invite, and we can all hopefully come together in person safely.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Cruz and Elizabeth, for that incredible presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing from our parents, especially, and the impact that FMCI has had on our community. Board members, any comments or questions?
Just thank you for all the hard work that you do. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's our pleasure. Honestly, I think we have an awesome team at all of our sites, super dedicated and really love and in service to the community. So happy to do it.
I just want to say thank you, Elizabeth, also for the tremendous work you do and have been doing. How long have you been at the center or at the head of this the organization?
Leading it 8 years.
Okay.
8 years, but involved since the beginning.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming and giving us periodic updates, because we kind of forget all the things that the Family Resource Center, yourself, that are done throughout the district. And so I'm really glad that you come out and touch base with us periodically and really update us and let us know about all the services that are provided. And the parent testimonials were really tremendous in terms of the benefits that they receive from being involved, in the center. And so, but thank you very much for that presentation tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll make sure to share with the team, because really it's their work of building relationships with people and providing, delivering the service that really makes a difference. And I shared five stories of individuals, and all of them with amazing, wonderful experiences and stories. And I know that there's so many more. And this year, our intention, we're planning, I'm actually looking for evaluators right now, because we really need to do an impact, not only in neighborhood, not only the individual impact stories, but also just a neighborhood-wide transformation that we've been able to accomplish.
Thank you. Thank you once more.
Thank you.
I want to echo the same things as all the board members. To Elizabeth, I've known when I first got voted onto the board, FMCI was one of the first committees I've attended, and just seeing you work in that committee, and from that point into seeing how it's grown now is exponential. It's amazing, the amount of work and services that you include into FMCI. And when I think of FMCI, I see it as this holistic community hub, right? That every parent has the ability to access into, but that's not the important part. The important part is sending that message out to the community so that they know they have this all these services available to them. And you've done just such an amazing job by not only starting in that small little portable Nexus NT, I believe, and then growing it into having it grow with EduCare coming in and partnering with EduCare, expanding the scope of your work in that community, not only to reform, maybe that's not the best word to use, but to change the way Santee is viewed, and then expand that over to Dahl and Daniel Leron, Seven Trees as well. So really, I just want to commend you on all the great work you've done and continue to do. And I gotta say, our district will not look the same if you weren't here.
Yeah, well, thank you for your support. Definitely, I shared with you some of the work we do, and there's so much more to do, right? With our limited funds, we are at basically 3 school sites. We work with more than just the 3 school sites, but it's just not enough, right? Like I wish we had enough resources to be at every site, but we could continue to work at it.
Yeah, Elizabeth, this is Rudy. I also want to echo everybody's remarks and thank you as well. And you mentioned that you had been leading the organization for 8 years. However, FMCI has been around since what, 2005, was it? Was it 2005 or later than that?
It was planning grant was 2009 and implementation 2010.
And didn't it start in a portable next to on the Bridges campus?
It started at a portable next to.
Or was it Santee?
Santee.
It was Santee. Okay. Hey, and I also wanted to congratulate you on You were mentioned in a blog post on a website called New America, which is about creating social change and looking at education. And they actually wrote an article on the Franklin-McKinley School District. The entire article is on investments in teacher training payoff during the pandemic, and it mentions the initiative FMCI and how you're running multilingual workshops for parents and caregivers on computer basics and how to support students in distance learning. So you're featured in that article as well, and I want to congratulate you on the great work that you're doing. And I know that was mentioned in the presentation, so great job.
Oh, great. Thank you. I didn't know that, Rudy. Thanks
Yeah,
for sharing.
I will send the link to the blog post to the superintendent, and I'll include you in there as well so you can read it as well.
Thank you.
It's on social media.
Yeah, I'll send it to all the board members. I wasn't sure that it was already posted, so thank you for.
Well, you should know by now, Juan, when it's on social media, I catch it.
I know you do. I gotta get better at that. Really.
I need to get a live during this pandemic.
If I could just add, I think part of the comments that you're all making, and just recognizing the incredible work that Catholic Charities, Elizabeth and their team are doing, in just a recognition of FMCI as an initiative, as a whole community initiative that obviously requires a great partnership. And as a result of that, First Five has recognized that and is now moving to have the FRC Educare be what is determined to be a beacon of hope sort of center, where no wrong door, just whole family support, and will be one of three of the beacons of hope that First Five County and partnerships are going to launch in the entire county. And so we're very, very happy that that's happening within our community and access, the access that our families are going to have. And it has everything to do with the partnership that we have with Catholic Charities, Educare, and just the confidence that they have that this is the place to put it.
Absolutely. And, just on behalf of the board, again, Elizabeth and your team, please do thank them for all the work that they're, day in and day out, even throughout this pandemic. And as you mentioned, this is really just a drop in the bucket. I know so many other initiatives, even with advocacies in the local city and county level that you've also participated in with your team. So thank you once again, and congratulations on all the incredible work that you're leading. Thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So with that, we will go ahead and go on to our consent items. Item 6, consent items under 25,000. Members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaws 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. So board members, go ahead and let me know if you'd like to pull any items from item 6. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve consent items 6.01 to 6.04.
Second.
Great. Items 6.01 through 6.04 have been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
My vote, Limona Filberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We'll go to item 7. So these are consent items over 25,000. Again, members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items in accordance with board bylaws 9323. Individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. Superintendent Cruz, are there any comments on this item?
No comments.
Okay. Board members, are there any items you'd like to pull? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve consent items 7.01 through 7.03.
Second.
Right, items 7.01 through 7.03 have been moved and seconded. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
My vote, Maimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We'll go to construction items.
Board President, if I could,
Yes.
I'd like to let our translators that know that they can log off now. That there's no other participants for them to potentially translate. So thank you for being with us tonight, and you guys can have the rest of the night off.
Thank you. Thank you to our translators. So for construction items, members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items in accordance with board bylaws 9323. Individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. Are there any comments on this item, Superintendent Cruz?
There are no comments.
Okay. Board members, are there any items you would like to pull? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve construction items 8.01 through 8.04.
Second.
Items 8.01 through 8.04 have been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez,
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
And my vote, Maimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We will move to item 9, action items. Item 9.01, personnel report. There is no personnel addendum at this time, so I'll accept a motion on this item.
Move to approve action item 9.01, personnel report.
Second.
Right, the personnel report, item 9.01, has been moved and seconded. We'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez,
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
And my vote, Maimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We'll go to item 9.02, March 9th, 2021, board meeting minutes. Board members, if there's, hopefully you've had a chance to review those. I'll accept a motion when you're ready.
Move to approve the March 9th board meeting minutes.
Second.
Right. The March 9th board meeting minutes, item 9.02, have been moved and seconded. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez,
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
And my vote, Maimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We will go to item 9.03, reporting on delegating authority to take the necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus COVID-19. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, no other items to report other than what we discussed earlier on 501.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now go to item 9.04, resolution 2021-08, week of the young child.
Yes, this is a resolution that Board President you've brought forward, so it's part of our regular calendar now, and so we bring this forward for your consideration if you want to introduce it.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. Yeah, so I think this actually ties in really nicely to the work that Elizabeth was also describing as part of, a lot of different initiatives that we have going on in our district, and really supporting and nurturing the cradle to career pipeline when we think about the success of our students, starting off with our youngest learners and residents here in our district. And so really focusing on, holistic learning and opportunities for our families to develop and create a pipeline for early learning so that students are ready when they start in-person and instruction as well. Any other comments or questions, board members?
No, thank you.
Otherwise,
No, just thank you
Go
for
ahead.
bringing the resolution forward, my Mona. Yeah, starts with young kids, our babies, as they grow up. And I have a grandson. He's like 16 months old now, so kind of getting used to all the different stages of childhood, and so it's been real exciting. But definitely a resolution that we all support here in our district.
And I think, exactly to that point, Board Member Sanchez, one of the programs I know Elizabeth mentioned was the Family Friend and Neighbor, and this idea of a community helping raise a child. I know one of the trainings that they've done is talking about some of those developmental milestones, now that I'm more aware of with my own daughter, and, seeing her smile for the first time, and, recognizing that as one of those developmental milestone steps, and teaching our communities and our neighbors and caregivers to be conscientious of that as well. So really excited to have this hopefully move forward here. So with that, I'll accept a motion unless there's other comments.
I'd like to go ahead and move forward and accept action item 9.04, resolution number 2021-08, the week of the young child.
Second.
Item 9.04, resolution 2021-08, week of the young child, has been moved and seconded. We'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
And my vote, Maymona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now go to item 9.05, resolution 2021-09, in support of Autism Awareness Month.
Yes, and we bring this forward as a request from Clerk Rosado, so I'll let her introduce it.
Yeah, so April is known as Autism Awareness Month, and it's important to me since I have two boys on the spectrum, and this is one of those developmental disorders that impacts an individual for the rest of their lives, and it impacts boys 4 times as likely. And it's something that impacts in the US about 3.5 million individuals. So it's definitely one of those impactful disorders that exist. And this is a great way to show our awareness, but also our sense of diversity and inclusion by recognizing April as Autism Awareness Month. And I'm curious, is the district planning on doing anything in April? I know with distance learning, that's challenging, but I know if
district-wide, we are not, but obviously we will be continuing to support activities that happen at our school sites. I know that typically we have activities at Dahl and at Windmill and Los Arboles, so we will continue to provide that awareness. And certainly when we are able to do more activities in person, we will continue to do that district-wide.
Thank you, Carrie. Board members, additional comments or questions?
I just want to thank Carrie for bringing this resolution forward. And every child is special to us, and there's kids and more who need a little bit more attention, and they're just as special to our district, and we just hope we can continue supporting them even more so with programs and services in the future. So thank you, Carrie, for bringing it forward.
Yeah, and I echo those remarks. And thank you, Carrie, for bringing this forward. I think a lot of families are affected by having a child or a relative with autism. And I recall when I was young, before it was even recognized, that people didn't know what it was. And I recall having a cousin my age when I was in elementary school with the disorder, and how people were treating my cousin differently even kind of badly, because we didn't know what she was going through. And so it's great to recognize this, and it's surprising to see that, to be reminded that more boys are affected by it than girls. I was in the family where my cousin, she was a girl, and she was affected by it. And I recall, we during the holidays when we all got together, she was part of our celebrations, regardless of what occurred, regardless of how she was. And it was the love of my family that helped her live really a long life. And she lived till she was in her 50s. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. And I just want to echo those comments as well. As a special education teacher, I work with quite a number of students with autism, and it's always, what amazes me is just how much the rest of the class honestly learned from my students with autism. It's just, it's incredible to be reminded of that when we really truly value inclusion and celebrate that diversity, all of our students bring something with them in terms of who they are, when we can cultivate that space so that they can be who they truly are. So thank you, Carrie, for bringing this forward. And so with that, I'll accept a motion and a second when we're ready.
I move to approve the resolution 2021-09 in support of Autism Awareness Month.
Second.
Right. Item 9.05, Resolution 2021-09 in support of Autism Awareness Month has been moved and seconded. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Sorry, it was muted. Aye.
Thank you. Vice President Tran?
Aye.
And my vote, Maimona of Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We will now go on to item 9.06, Resolution 2021-10, Dolores Huerta Day.
Yes, so this has now become one of our annual resolutions in recognition of the work of Dolores Huerta, and this is, I'll have our board president further introduce it.
Yes, and Dolores Huerta is someone who, sometimes is less recognized, but I think deserves equal recognition in terms of her work as a civil rights leader and community organizer, and particularly, her continued advocacy today, around the census, around, helping community better understand the COVID-19 pandemic, and their role in helping get the supports and resources that community members need. And so I think it's really important for our district to recognize Dolores Huerta Day, and also sharing the information whenever possible with our students as well, so that, especially in light of Women's History Month this month as well, it's important that we also recognize, strong women leaders in our communities. Any comments or questions, members?
Yeah, I have just a quick comment. I didn't know who she was when I met her as a child, but I did meet her as a child, and she was speaking, and my father took us to a rally, and she was there, and I did end up meeting her more formally in the 90s. I think it was about 25 years ago, and that's when I really spoke to her at a convention in Washington, D.C. About what she had done through her life, and I talked to her about meeting her as a child, and she was excited about that, and she shows love to everybody. That's just the kind of person she is. And I think that George, you've met her as well at different events, and she is just a good-hearted person. I think she would be very humbled by this,
yes,
by having this day being recognized. It's not about having a Dolores Huerta Day that's important to her. What's important to her is about bettering the lives of the people who are disadvantaged, including the farm workers who she worked for throughout many years. So I think she would be a little humbled by this, but I'd be happy to support it as, as Dolores Huerta Day. I think that people bring these up just so they can recognize her, but I know that she would be very humbled by it.
Thank you for sharing that, Rudy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm also very supportive of this resolution. And I've had the privilege of meeting and hearing Dolores several times at the conferences that she's been to. We always associate Dolores with Cesar Chavez, but she is a person in her own right. She's done so many great things. And she's still out there. She's not as active as before. She's 90 years old, but she still gets around. And so I'm very glad that we're recognizing her today. Thank you.
Thank you, George. With that, let's accept a motion on this item.
I'd like to go ahead and move forward on item 9.06, resolution number 2021-10, Dolores Huerta Day.
Second.
Item 9.06, resolution 2021-10, Dolores Huerta Day has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado. Clerk Rosado.
I think she's on mute.
No, I think she got frozen.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. We'll come back. Vice President Tran.
Aye.
My vote, Maymon Alberta, is aye. Carrie, can you hear us?
There she is.
Aye. Sorry, I lost the volume.
That's okay. Thank you. So that motion passes unanimously. We will now go on to item 9.07, resolution 2021-11, 46th Black April commemoration.
This is our annual commemoration designated April 30th, as Black Black April. And I think that this is, an opportune time given everything that's going on throughout our nation in regards to the hate and bigotry that our Asian community is facing. So I will defer to our Vice President Tran to further present this.
Thanks, Juan. So it's with a very heavy heart for me to speak on this when everything is going on in the world right now. But all my life, I've been doing what I can to show my parents that all their sacrifices they made just to come over to America were not in vain. They shielded me from all sorts of pain, as strict of parents as they were, all of which I suddenly understand much more now. I never gave it much thought about how much racism and unnecessary hate that my parents had to endure when they found themselves here in America. And while they were raising me, I know they developed very thick skin, enough to ignore all racial remarks, keep quiet, and just move on with their lives. All those practices they pushed down to me as well. So that's pretty much how I dealt with racism all my life as well. But this hate and violence, it has to stop now. I mean, there's only so much that we can take, and there's no room for it at this point. Our students' future does not need this, and they deserve so much better. So I wanted to take that opportunity just to say that piece about it. Obviously, when it comes to Black April commemoration, I want our district to push that kind of education for our students to learn more about the culture of their Vietnamese friends that they have, and not to understand it more and to accept it, knowing that you won't be subjected to it, but just to accept cultural differences. And I think that's going to be one great step that a lot of different school districts have to take on eventually. That's it.
Thank you, Tan. Certainly a very heartfelt message in terms of our role as a district and as educators, that we have, the obligation we have truly with our students and community to amplify the histories, to make sure that, you know, the histories also don't keep repeating themselves. So thank you. Board members, any additional comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to also mention that I was a senior in high school, and I was very fortunate in one of my classes. I think it was history. I had already taken, I can't remember which class it was. It may not even had anything to do. It might have been English. The teacher made a point when the fall of Saigon happened on April 30th. We were just, and you know, it was getting towards the end of my high school education. She made a point of making sure that we saw the news and reported on what we saw and understood exactly what happened. And I mentioned this before, but it was one of the saddest things that I saw was seeing people leaving their country with the yellow red striped flag, and having it, embracing it on the boats that they were evacuating to the Philippines, and seeing on the mainland the same flags being torn down and burned and ripped, and the communist flag being hoisted up on the poles. I recall that very clearly as a senior in high school, and it made me sad because I was thinking that how would I feel if I lost my country, which is the United States of America? So this has a lot of meaning to me, knowing that I witnessed it, you know, live in person on TV. And also my brother is a Vietnam War veteran as well. And let's see here. And I just wanted to mention that, and the hate going on with the Asian American community, the AAPI community right now is disgusting, and I'm saddened by it. And I think that there's a lot of ignorant people and bigoted people in our country that it needs to stop. So I agree with you, Tan.
Thank you, Rudy.
I'm also very supportive of this resolution. In fact, we had some big plans last year to really kind of celebrate even more so, commemorate more so this day. We're going to work with Von Lay from Eastside, but we know what happened last year and continuing through this year. But hopefully we'll be able to do something special maybe by next year. And see how things go at that time. But we're very, very appreciative of all the efforts that were made by our Vietnamese immigrants, and all the struggles that they have gone through, and you know, and the contributions they made to this country. Like other groups, you know, they definitely made their mark, and so we have to recognize our Vietnamese population for all the great things that they've done, and again, hopefully next year sometime we'll be able to have a day that we can commemorate a little bit more visibly at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Any additional comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll accept the motion on this item.
So just so that we will, even though we won't be able to have the type of ceremony where we invite everybody, I do want to plan a flag raising ceremony on the 30th, So I'll coordinate with the Vice President Tran and then look at whether it's yourself or other community members, in a small group, we could still do that and post it to our social media at least as a recognition of the day, even though we can't have this type of events that we normally have in person.
That'll be great one. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. So I will accept a motion when we're ready.
I'd like to make a motion on item 9.07, resolution number 2021-11, the 46th Black April commemoration.
Second.
Right, resolution 2021-11, 46th Black April commemoration has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez,
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
Vice President Tran.
Aye.
My vote, Maymon Alberta, is aye. That motion passes unanimously. We will go to item 10, communications from the superintendent.
I just want to publicly thank our staff, our parents, for turning out to our town hall meetings. It was important for us to hear from them, and they showed up in numbers, which was good, so that we knew that what we were proposing to the board had that level of input and support, and that we felt confident that the recommendation was going to be based on what we heard from all stakeholders. So we had over almost 400 parents that showed up to, between the three meetings that we had, and we had about 300 staff members that showed up on Monday. So just very thankful for their input and their patience, and none of this is easy, and certainly we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide support for our students and families, but also balancing that with the health and safety of everyone. And I know that was, very much expressed by the board, and I want to thank the board for your support in this and the confidence that we can do this safely, and we can actually provide more support for our students as well. And looking forward to implementing our in-person model as a way to start building that bridge to coming back in person for August, and obviously the summer will be another step for that, and just very, very hopeful for the future of our students being able to do that. That is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now go to item 11, communications from the Board of Education. Item 11.01, board member reports. And we'll start with Board Member Sanchez.
Yes, thank you. I want to report that I finally got my first vaccine this last Wednesday, and I went to the fairgrounds. And I want to thank Jason for sending me the link, and it worked out really, really good. I had actually 2 appointments with Kaiser, and guess what? They both use Moderna, and people go, well, it's the same thing. Well, okay, but you know what? It's my body. I'd rather have Pfizer. And so anyway, so I held off, and then so with Jason's help, I was able to get my first shot. I get my second one on April 7th. And you have a slight headache and all that, and I'm sure those of you who have had it would probably have that, but it wasn't no big thing. You take some Advil or aspirin, and it works out pretty good. So so again, so I'm glad that I got at least my first shot out of the way. And then the other thing, last Thursday, of course, we had our food drive at the Second Harvest food drive over at Larone School, and so I was able to help out on that day. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes, George, they're all the same. Oh my goodness, they're all the same. It's in your mind. It's in your mind.
All right.
Okay, so I just wanted to report that I also participated in the staff town hall on Monday, and I'd like to thank the staff, the district staff, for coordinating it was such a well-organized meeting, and I believe everybody was heard who wanted to speak, and that was important. So I appreciate. I just sat there and listened most of the time, and it was well done. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was that, I think I'd like to publicly congratulate her on action item 9.01, the personnel report. There's a little mention of somebody retiring. And so Dr. Norma Martinez Palmer, I'd love to congratulate you. Even though we don't want you to retire, we have approved it now. So congratulations on your retirement at the end of the school year. Or I think it's when is it? June 30th, 2025? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, but just congratulations. And we know that you'll always be around and supporting our district in the future. So thank you so much for all you have done. You're muted, but that's okay.
Thank you, Rudy.
That's
I said thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rudy. We'll go to Carrie.
No report.
Thank you. Tan?
Same sentiments, Norma. I did see the name, and just wanted to congratulate you. I don't know if I'm at the right age to be jealous, but I definitely hope wish you the best. And then we have 3 more months with you, so we'll try to use you as much as we can. But thank you so much for all you've done.
No pressure, Norma. Thank you so much. No, I completely agree. And so we're very lucky to have you as a district, and best wishes as well in your retirement. I also wanted to share, I received my 2nd dose of the Pfizer vaccine yesterday. So I guess you could say I'm fully inoculated. Doing pretty well too. So that's exciting. I think just the more individuals who are eligible that we can get, I think we're better off as a community, as a nation, and hopefully globally as well. I also was able to participate in CSBA's Legislative Action Week last week, meeting with assembly members and specifically talking about 3 bills, AB 14, SB 4, and AB 34, which all have to do with the digital divide and broadband access. So really exciting stuff happening at the state level. And then I also wanted to just share, I participated in Assemblymember Kalra's Women's History Month celebration. And I was humbled to be honored as a Woman of Distinction for Assembly District 27, which is our district here. So excited about that. And then finally, I did participate in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee last week. And we're just making such incredible progress there, and really excited to continue sharing. We're working on our communication strategy to share those updates with the district as well, or with the board and the rest of the district as well. So that's my report. We will go ahead and go on to item 11.02, agenda item requests. So it looks like we have a couple of requests.
Yeah, I don't have a request. I just have a quick question. With Santa Clara County moving to the now orange tier tomorrow, do we have any plans to have in-person board meetings soon?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We are I'm working with IT to install a camera that would allow for us to do in person and have our public still participate by watching it through our YouTube channel. So we are, board president and I have had discussion about moving to in-person board meetings from that standpoint.
So we'll definitely keep everyone updated in terms of the progress with that and when that can happen, just based on when we're able to get the cameras installed so we can continue the live streaming. and virtual participation for participants. Thank you for that question, Rudy. Any other agenda item requests?
No.
Okay. So we'll go to item 12, future business. There's none there at this time. So item 13, future meeting dates. So you can see 1301, April 13th is our next board meeting. 3.02, April 27th board meeting, and then 13.03, May 11th board meeting. And so if there are changes to the location of any of those meetings, that will be published with the agenda as well. Item 14, closed session. We are not returning to closed session at this time. So we'll go to item 15, adjournment. And I would like to ask the maker of the motion if we could adjourn tonight's meeting in honor and in memory of the lives taken both at the Atlanta shooting as well as the lives that were taken in Colorado in that shooting as well.
Move to adjourn in memory of those lives lost.
Second.
All right, we have been moved to adjourn in memory of those victims. We'll go to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
Vice President Tran?
Aye.
I'm Mimona Zapata, vote aye. So we are now adjourned at 9:44 p.m. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a nice evening.